Let's turn our attention now to one of the most extraordinary stories that happened last week when P&O Ferries fired 800 workers and then planned to hire a whole load of agency workers to do the same jobs much more cheaply. Well, Labour's planning to use its first opposition day debate in the House of Commons this afternoon to call for a vote on outlawing fire and hire practices. Well, we've been following this, the progress of trying to change the law on fire and rehire over recent months, if not more than a year now. Barry Gardiner, the Labour MP, has been campaigning on it and joins me now. Morning, Barry.
Morning. Yeah.
So when we were talking about fire and rehire before, although there had been some examples of it, it felt something in the abstract, and now everyone knows exactly what this means because of this. What did you think when you first saw this P&O story?
Well, look, this is exactly what my bill was designed to avoid. We had seen multiple examples: British Airways, British Gas, Heathrow, Weetabix even, Clark Shoes, all of whom had fired and rehired workers, often taking not just changes in their terms and conditions, but actually taking £10,000–15,000 off their annual salary. So we knew what was going on, and it was imperative that the government acted. In October, my bill came before the House, and unfortunately the government blocked it. They filibustered it out. They just talked it out. But, ironically, for all the hand-wringing that's now gone on with government ministers saying, oh, this is terrible, it's awful, it mustn't be allowed. Well, they had the opportunity. They had the opportunity in October, of course, but they also had the opportunity last Friday. Because as you know, Matt, what happens with private members' bills is they keep on coming back and looking for another opportunity. And that's exactly what happened on Friday. And we called for the bill to be taken now on Friday, and the government objected. So they have the opportunity to pass legislation that would put an end to this vile practice. They failed to take it, and for all the hand-wringing, for all the protestations about how terrible they think it is, the reality is that the government is happy for people to continue to feel insecure in the workplace, and that's not good enough.
Is there a distinction, and this is a genuine question, between when we talked before, it was companies laying staff off and then rehiring the same people on worse terms and conditions? Whereas in this case, it was firing everyone to replace them with agency workers. Does your bill catch both?
It does.
Yeah.
And this is why when, in fact, during the statement, it was very interesting to see the way in which the government responded. Because I made the point during the statement that had they enacted the measures in my bill, then this couldn't have happened. And at that point, I saw the Minister for Employment lean across to the Transport Minister and say, oh, but this is a case of fire but not rehire.
Yeah.
And that's why when he then answered, and to say that, I said, yes, but I talked about the measures in my bill, because my bill actually put in place all the steps that a good employer would naturally take when they were having to restructure. And I think it's really important to understand that we recognise in the Labour Party that actually companies sometimes do have to restructure. They go through bad patches, they go through hard times. Yes, they do have to restructure. And the unions recognise that as well. And when we were working together, I worked with 22 unions to put this bill together, as well as, employment lawyers, the Institute of Employment Rights. And what we did was we said, let's instantiate good practice and penalise bad.
So what should have happened in this case? Should it have been that P&O say, look, partly because of the pandemic and whatever else, we are in financial trouble.
Yep.
So they go to the unions and say, look, what was the package that we can... It might mean we ask staff to take a pay cut, but that's negotiated with the staff.
Exactly right. Look, what would have happened had my bill been in place is there would have been a duty to consult the employees in the first place. There would have been a duty on the employer to disclose information to the workforce about why they needed to restructure. So they couldn't just say, well, we need to. They'd have to explain and show the books, basically. They would also have to notify the government, give the government a minimum of 45 days notice. And that's in line with other parts of our employment legislation. And it would have then meant that if they failed to follow that good practice, then a complaint could have been made to the Central Arbitration Committee and an injunction could have been taken out against the company to restore the jobs. And actually, it would have then been possible to make sure that there was a penalty against the employer if they'd failed to adopt the good practice set out in statute. And that would have been, a very large fine in this case. So there are all sorts of ways in which the measures that were in my bill would have helped here, irrespective of the fact that the government was not then, that the employer in this case, P&O, were not going to rehire the same people.
And so what happens now? Because, P&O, they clearly thought, sack everyone, bring the agency workers in, keep sailing on. That clearly didn't happen last week. Their ferries ended up tied up in docks with a massive row ongoing. Do you think P&O survives this?
Look, P&O has been an important part of our distribution network and our transport network for many, many years. Nobody wants to see a company go into liquidation. What we want here is a recognition from P&O management and also from DP World, who are their owners, don't forget. And let's remember that they paid £270 million to their shareholders last year. And they're also, at the moment, whilst the pension fund that those workers, the P&O workers, are part of, is light by £146 million, so there's a hole in the pension fund, DP World have actually spent £147 million sponsoring the European Golf Tour. So this idea that, it's crisis time financially, there's no money in our back pocket, let's get it right. Okay? What I want to see is proper negotiation. I want to see these workers reinstated. I want to make sure that there is a proper negotiation about how to take the company forward. Everybody accepts that COVID was a very hard time for the transport industry, but it's not going to be like that always. And using the bad figures that no doubt they had, the losses that they made whilst there was a pandemic on and nobody could travel, is not the basis then to do a fake manoeuvre in terms of cutting your workforce's pay and getting rid of them entirely.
Barry Gardiner, really good to speak to you. We'll keep across, of course, what happens in the House of Commons later.